I told you they'd make one. You owe me 20 quid. Canon have just released two new RF cameras, the R10 and the R7. Now, about 2 years ago now, I made a video predicting an R7 being released. Something like a mirrorless replacement to the 7D series. I felt that was something that the RF system needed. A fast, action-focused, but more budget-friendly APS-C sports camera. And the R7 is it. And I was quite surprised as to how close I was on the specs. I mean, admittedly, it wasn't entirely there. There was a few things I hadn't seen coming. The first main thing I hadn't seen coming was an R10 at all. But, you know, two for the price of one, why not? R7, the spec that I did get right was the use of a 32 meg sensor rather than a 24 or bothering to develop anything brand new. Speed-wise, I wasn't entirely there. I predicted 15 frames. No, I predicted 20 frames a second mechanical. It's only 15. Only 15. It can do 30 frames a second mechanical. Although, from Jared Poland's preview of it, it does look like there is quite a bit of rolling shutter in electronic because, unfortunately, it's not a stacked sensor. Both of them can do 4K, 24p, I believe, with full sensor readout, and 1080 at 120 frames a second, again with no crop, and 4K 60 with a crop. And these now have no 30-minute recording limit and looks like autofocus capabilities for all video formats. So admittedly, nothing new compared to the competition, but for Canon cameras, APS-C cameras at least, they've finally thrown everything into it, which is really good to see. I'd also predicted that the R7 would have a body style similar to the R6. I didn't think it would literally be like a miniature R3. I thought it would basically take the R6 body. It's similar to the R6, but it's actually fractionally smaller, which may or may not be a problem. I think so many people have been critical about like Sony A7 series cameras of just being too small for if you want to use, say, a really big lens. And I felt the R6 body would probably just about be big enough to work on the really long lenses and people would be happy with it without being overly ridiculous. They've gone slightly short of, slightly smaller than the R6, so it may be on the cusp for some people as to whether it's big enough or not for their hands, but I imagine at some point there will be a battery grip available for it, so I don't think it's going to be unusable. The one thing that is debatable about it, though, is the revised button layouts. First off, there's no top LCD screen, which granted the R6 didn't have, but both of the previous 7D DSLRs did have, and I thought maybe they might squeeze one onto the R7. They haven't. And then the thumb wheel, the traditional thumb wheel at the bottom, has now been moved right up to the top with a joystick embedded in the middle of it. And when I first saw that, I thought it looked a bit ridiculous. It reminded me of the old touch bar on the original EOS R. I just thought it was some weird quirk that Canon had thought, well, let's make it a bit different, and just gone completely ridiculous with it. However, from the previews of people using the camera, they seem to be okay with it. Might take a little bit of getting used to, but, you know, it looks like something that is easily adapted. And who knows, it might actually work out to be better, but it just seemed a bit peculiar at the time. What else? 2 memory card slots on the R7, 1 on the R10. Unsurprising, really. All UHS 2 SD cards. The viewfinder on the R7, at least, not the highest resolution one out there, not the best quality one, but reasonable enough, I imagine. Although I do wonder whether Canon could actually mount that thing any further out from the body or not. It seems huge. But overall, mighty looking specs, especially when you consider the price points, and they were quite surprising. The R10 is priced at 1,000 quid, which probably is about what to be expected given the fact that it seems to be essentially a replacement to the 90D, and I'm pretty sure the 90D was around that sort of price point when it was launched. So that one makes sense. The R7 I thought would be more like $2,000, given the fact that both the 7D DSLRs were that sort of price point. But in fact, the R7's only 1,500 quid, which I think is incredible value considering the specs. I mean, granted, I've not used the camera. Higher resolution, faster shooting speeds, 2 memory card slots rather than 1. It just generally overall seems like more than a 50% better camera. So I think in terms of value for specs, the R7 seems to be a better offering. But the R10 does seem like a really good camera for the money if your budget doesn't stretch that far. And the extra 500 quid could go towards lenses, of which Canon have also released 2 Rfs lenses. Are they calling them RFS? Basically, APS-C specific RF lenses, which is something else that I thought they might do. I thought they could get away with an R7 using only full-frame lenses because most people are going to be using long telephoto lenses like 70 to 200s and 100 to 500s, which they already make in RF mount. But for more budget-friendly APS-C cameras, they would probably need some APS-C specific lenses that could be made cheaper. And they've released 2 so far, an 18 to 45 kit lens and an 18 to 150mm, similar to they had on the EOS M series. I suspect they're going to expand that further. Hopefully they're not going to do another EOS M line where, they just release a half a dozen lenses and then just leave it to die. You're very licky today, Rust. You are. Now, maybe you sat there and thinking, well, that's great, Dave, but I don't own anything Canon. Maybe you're a Sony shooter and you're thinking, what possible difference could this R7 and R10 make to me? And the answer is directly very little, but it could be a very good thing overall for the market and in the long term could help you. Because along with 2 years ago me predicting an R7, I was also predicting a similar sort of camera from Sony, a high-end APS-C sports wildlife focus camera, basically like a baby A9. That has never come to fruition. Sony seem more hell-bent on ZV cameras than high-end APS-Cs, but hopefully, I'm hoping at least, that the release of this R7 from Canon might prompt Sony to put a little bit more effort into their higher-end APS-C cameras, because right now the highest they've got is the A6600, which compared to the R7 is nowhere near. Now, there are rumors going around of 3 new APS-C lenses for Sony E-mount, which do sound quite interesting if the specs of those are right, which maybe is a precursor to Sony starting to invest a little bit more in their APS-C lineup. And hopefully, maybe this R7 release might prompt them to come out with something like a baby A9. Hopefully, anyway, but that is it for today's video. What do you make of the R7? Are you a Canon shooter and you're liking the look of it? Are you not a Canon shooter and you're envious of it? Or do you not think it's to your taste at all? Let me know your thoughts and comments down below while you're down there. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe button, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.